Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first broadcast of PlanesTalking. I'm your host, Baron Bismarck, and it's great to have you here. All right, so for your edification, I'm just going to give a brief summary of what we're going to do here, so that our fans at home know what's going on and why. PlanesTalking is a little show we've come up with where we're going to talk about stuff that's happening in the world of Magic the Gathering, because it's a trading card game that we all play. And yeah, it's good and fun.
All right.
So on today, for the first episode of PlanesTalking, we've gathered up the deck list of three different decks. One a little strange, one nice and budget, cheap for your wallet, and one that's pro deck, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. MTG
it has placed
top.
first place. Yep.
So we're going to have, here with me today I have Fenrir and Orange, of course, because they're the other hosts on this show. I'm the master host of this segment. All right, so we're going to have Fenrir start us up with a self-land destruction deck.
All right. So I've come across this deck a couple months ago, like right about when they started pre-releasing Origins. And I have to admit, I love this deck. I have built a bond with this deck. So, for your creature-based, you're only going to have a Courser of Crucifix and Nissa from Origins. And then, spells, you're going to have Aggressive Mining, Animus Awakening, Magmatic Insight, and then Molten Vortex. So and a crap ton of lands. You're going to have 39 lands, 14 spells, and 7 creatures. And we'll talk a little bit more about the sideboard later on. So the synergy of this.
All right.
So we have the Courser of Crucifix. This is a creature well known for its, hey, I have a land. Let's keep playing and playing and playing them, just taking them out of the library. So that helps push the deck into the... This card actually pushes the aggro button on this deck.
Since basically the deck is 70% land, you're going to have all of them out pretty quick. Well, not all of them, but most of them out.
You're going to have them out.
Yeah, but the point is to get them all as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then, what essentially is going to happen is you're going to be playing Aggressive Mining. So you can't play lands, sacrifice a land, draw 2 cards. So, and you can only activate it once each turn. So you're like, what? Why is this card any good? Well, because with Aggressive Mining comboed with Molten Vortex, you're pretty much sacrificing a land to draw. You have a very high chance of drawing into 2 more lands, and then you pay 2 red, discard both, and deal 4 damage. You know, to like target creature, or to target player, or 4 to target creature, 4 to player's face. And
hey.
You know, and it's completely crazy. And you do kind of have control of the board this way, but you are not heavy creature. Like, you control the board because of your lands, essentially, in your hand. And then you have Magmatic Insight, which is just, you know, more land draw, or, sorry, not land draw, card draw, essentially. And then Animus Awakening is... oh, I'm just going to get all these lands out of my deck real quick.
Because since you're going to have so many lands of that deck, you should be spending 8 or 9 mana on that to get a whole bunch of lands straight out of your deck.
Yes.
It is,
which does get around the aggressive mining clause.
Yes.
You're going to really need to have your your Molten Vortex as early as you can, though. That needs to be like one of the first things you draw, because you're going to get barraged from other attacks from earlier paced or faster paced decks, because you don't really have creatures to block stuff unless you get your coursers out. But if you can get that Molten Vortex out as quick as you can be dealing that damage stuff and not letting them touch you much quicker.
Yeah, having looked at this deck list, heard about this deck list before and heard about the deck itself, I'll admit I'm a little bit of a doubter, because it is so incredibly linear in its play style. If everything doesn't fall like almost exactly right, it's going to be incredibly hard for you to make a comeback if the other person gets an advantage over you. And I mean, you only have so many things that you can play, so if you lose those things, you're going to have pretty bad time pretty quickly.
You don't have
If you
very
get
many
stuck with a whole bunch of lands and you don't have any of your cards that you need to make those lands effective.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so
I'm
discarding
not,
a mill is pretty
yes, but if
big.
you and pretty much any type of removal, like if the other person has a lot of enchantment destruction, for instance, you're going to lose a lot of your. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Everything dies to removal, but but yes, like Moldiest Orange said, you can get outpaced really easily if you don't get a great hand and a lot of good draws.
And you said earlier about the enchantment destruction. You only really have 6 enchantments in this deck, and that doesn't really leave you much room to.
No, that's 10% chance of having them.
Yeah.
So
if they get destroyed, good luck finding another one.
Yeah, good luck. Because all your tutors, of course, are going to be for lands because you need those lands to make the deck effective, I guess.
Just tell the person you're playing against that you're just getting mana screwed, and that'll be okay.
Yeah.
And please don't.
I will say though, I am fond of this deck just because it's a lot unlike any other kind of deck out there. Even if it's not necessarily going to be that competitive sometimes.
You could kind of classify this as a troll deck, maybe.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's a very casual deck that you're going to play for fun and not necessarily to win. Because remember, if you don't draw just the right hand, you might just lose outright.
Do not bring it to Friday Night Magic.
No.
You could
this
for
is not
fun,
the
if you.
That's true. It's standard legal. It's an interesting deck, but it's not something you're going to bring to a competitive scene. This is an incredibly casual deck that you're going to have to play in a casual scene.
This is like another one of those decks, like the infinite mana decks. This is just one of those decks you kind of use to have fun.
Like our friend Marshmallow has. It's the kind of deck that you just. Well, I guess that's a little bit of an expensive deck. We can bring that one up on another episode.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, all right, for creativity, I'm going to give this deck. I'm going to give it a 7 because I mean,
10.
Out of 10, 7 out of 10, because it's using a lot of cards that are already pretty good on their own in a very unique setting that utilize their functions very well. For synergy, I'm going to give it a 6. 6. I'm going to give it a 6 because clearly the deck is designed to be played in just the right way, and if you play it right, it's going to do well. But since you have so many lands, statistically, it might end up being pretty hard to get those things you need to play well. Ease of play.
I feel like. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Ease of play. I'm going to give it a 4 because if you don't, it's. If you don't do well, you don't do well. If you don't understand how that kind of deck works, you're going to have a bad time. So overall, I'm going to give this deck a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Orange?
All right. Let's just not say anything stupid. That's what I plan on saying. Creativity. I don't really think I might give it even a 6 or a 5 for creativity. The main cards here, he only has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards that aren't really lands. Most of these lands look like they're just thrown together, just random lands you could find. The 2 life, the gaining life, and is okay. It's good when you're taking a lot of harass. But again, it's only definitely life when it comes in, so it's not too helpful. And Foundry of the Consoles, 5 mana to sacrifice and only get 2 1/1s. I don't really know how helpful that's going to be for you.
Yeah, I've seen that card in a different kind of deck. It's pretty good, but in a deck like this that wants to get rid of the lands directly, it's not. It feels out of place.
You could have 4 more other lands that could be used. That'd be much more helpful than that.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like I don't really know why that land was in there, so all these kind of seem like random lands to put in.
A little bit.
But the aggressive mining, well, I meant Molten Vortex. That's going to be very helpful for it. But other than that, I don't know. It kind of seems like just some land stuff put together. But I don't know. It's pretty creative. People don't really think about how to utilize just lands. I kind of wanted to use an only land deck, but couldn't do it, and here it is. So I mean, I'm not discrediting the person who made it. It's just I don't know. I'll just give it a 6. That's all it's 6.
Yeah. Also a 6. All right.
For synergy, I think it works well together. My only issue with it is aggressive mining. Because if you put that enchantment out that makes you can't not play lands, say you start with that card in your hand. Like, that's a late game card, right?
A little bit, yeah. I see what you mean.
And the drawing 2 cards, what would be the use of drawing 2 cards, which is most likely to be lands in the first place? And you can't even play them. That would be my issue with that.
Unless, of course, you're already in the right situation to be doing that.
Yeah,
That's
where
true.
you do have the Molten Vortex out on the field.
That's
that you
true.
can use
Also,
to break things.
Yeah. I'll give it a 7 for synergy. It feels pretty synergetic. Ease of play, as you said earlier, it seems like if you don't get the right hand, the right cards, you could be doomed. You know, drawing 7 lands in the hand and not being able to do a thing with them. Like, I get mana screwed in decks all the time with only having 25 lands, and with 39, what am I?
You're gonna have a bad time.
Chances are gonna be even higher.
There's gonna be a day that you're gonna get the exact wrong hand.
And you're gonna go through the deck after the game and realize, oh my god, the next 20 cards are lands. Nothing is gonna happen. So, the ease of play, I'm gonna give it a 4. That's
all right. Yeah. So your overall?
Overall, I'll give it a 6.
Also a 6.
I play it for fun. But other than that,
I'd try it.
Yeah, I definitely try it out. Just like I want to try out Marshmallow's infinite mana deck. But yeah, it's just one of those I might try it once and then get angry all the other times and never play it again.
All right. So, Finir, you're the one who brought this deck to the table. What is your take on the deck?
All right. So creative, like, this deck is super creative. I would have never thought of like, hey, let's get 39 lands and then just stuff those lands full of enchantments for destroying them. And just like the whole idea of like self-destroy, like, you know, when you walk up to someone, oh, so what type of deck are you playing? Self-land destroy? Like, they're gonna give you the most like dumbfounded look, like, are you an idiot?
For a good reason.
For a very good reason, yes.
Yeah.
But creative, like, I have to give it a 9 on how creative it is, because it's a piece of art, like, it's artwork. You know, it was very well sculpted.
Okay.
All right, and then for synergy, I have to give it a 7, because, you know, all the cards work together well. Like, you know, maybe you don't get an aggressive mining or a molten vortex, but you have a magmatic insight and an animus awakening.
Or 7 lands.
Or 7 lands, you know. And going back to Foundry of the Consoles, I actually see that being useful against early game aggro players, because you can use the 2/1/1s as chump blockers and tone down the aggro a tad bit. Because you are going, like, you know, say you don't play aggressive mining, you're going to be getting a lot of lands onto the field, and then, you know, I am sitting on 6 lands, one of them including Foundry of the Consoles. What do? Oh, hey, I'm going to pop it, have 2/1/1s, and block some of his aggro, and take, you know, maybe like 3 or 4 less damage. So, synergy definitely has to be a 7 in my book. Alright, ease of play. This is probably one of, like, you guys are right when you say you have to get the right hands in order to do anything. Like, you have to have you have to have the enchantments. And, you know, if you don't pick up a crew fix or a molten vortex, you're kind of just sitting there with lands in hand and nothing really to do. Except for, like,
You're just
play
sitting
them.
there with
strong poker face on, be like, I gotta go.
Yeah, you'll just be sitting there with 14 mana and nothing to spend it on.
Yeah. So ease of play has to be a 5.
Okay.
And overall, I don't want my overall score to offend this beautiful creation, but I have to agree with both of you on this is a 6 overall. Because,
okay.
you know, I wouldn't bring this for Friday Night Magic. Are you kidding?
Are you comparing it to like Friday Night Magic or like casual play though?
I'm comparing it to competitive Friday Night Magic play.
Okay, alright.
But, you know, like, you know, casual play, I would totally rate this like a 10 out of 10, you know, best deck ever, most fun you're going to have in eons.
Of course.
All right.
So that's my take on it.
I guess our final verdict appears to be it's interesting and creative, but it's not competitive and not trustworthy. All right. Let's move on to the next deck.
I really kind of want to give it a shot though. I really do.
Oh sure.
Oh yeah, I'm making this deck.
Someday if you guys want to.
Like I am ordering this deck.
We should test that out someday.
I'm going to.
Yeah, he's going to build it. Well,
right.
Once he has it done, by whatever episode of PlanesTalking that's clearest on, we'll bring it up and let you guys know how it went. All right. So, the second deck we have on our list is called Starfield Enchantress. It's a budget deck. It's only $50, which I guess is a budget.
Right.
This is an enchantment deck that was inspired by the incredible enchantment support that they printed in Magic Origins with cards like Starfield of Nyx and Sigil of the Empty Throne, Eidolon of Blossoms. Those cards are pretty much the core of the deck. The idea of the deck, is that it uses it uses the font cycle. It uses the white and green font because it's a white-green deck, which is very interesting because those cards were regarded that cycle was regarded as probably the worst cycle of Journey into Nyx. It was very disheartening and disappointing to some of people because the white card gives you life gain at a very high price. But the idea of this deck is that you can use that white one to give you enough life to live long enough to stay in the game, so that you can get your more expensive Sigil of the Empty Throne and Starfield of Nyx and stuff like that. And the Font of Fertility is used to get the lands out so you can play those cards even faster. And then it only has 9 creatures. Only 9 creatures. It uses Nyx Fleece Ram, which is an incredible trump blocker and gains you some life over time, which is also useful. And Eidolon of Blossoms, which is arguably the best constellation creature printed. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. So if you have a couple of those Eidolons out, you will always have a full hand. You will always be able to cast some enchantment, no matter what the situation is. And then it has...
Even though you have those small amount of creatures, you're going to be pooping out angels hardcore.
Yes, if you can get out that Sigil of the Empty Throne, with every enchantment, you'll be just pooping out angels. You will have more than enough aggro and blocking. And then there's a couple other cards like Verdant Haven that he uses to ramp up a little more, because that lets your lands tap for more mana. And then there's a sort of control element to the deck, because there's 2 board wipes in the deck, 1 copy of End Hostilities and 1 Fated Retribution. The interesting thing about those cards is, since you're an enchantment deck with such few creatures, when you cast those wipes, you're probably going to be just fine, because you'll barely lose anything. You won't have any other creatures on the board. If you're up against a token deck, they're screwed. And then there's Banishing Light, so you can get rid of some annoying permanents. There's Bow of Nylian, Spear of Heliod, all that, so that your angels or your enchantments that have been brought to life by Starfield of Nyx can do some hilarious aggro to finish off your opponent. So,
that's great.
Should I start with my thoughts, or would one of you like to speak on it?
You start
this
with
deck is rude.
Start with my thoughts? Okay. I must say, I am a huge fan of this deck because I have seen there's a friend of ours actually has an enchantment deck that's constellation based, and I find it very fascinating to see that someone is actually able to pull off this competitive of an enchantment deck with barely using any of the constellation mechanic, which was meant for enchantment decks. There's only one card. I believe there's only one card with constellation in the deck at all, which I find incredibly remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of good ways to keep itself safe with during the early game with Banishing Light to get rid of early threats, Nyx Fleece Ram to block and get you some life as a buffer, and it even manages to apparently stay competitive using Font of Vigor, which is not that good. It's 5 mana for 7 life. Not a lot of people like that. But yes, it has ways to survive late enough into the game to drop out your Sigil of the Empty Throne and build up an army of angels with cheap enchantments that will likely give you even more mana and cards in order to set up for an even stronger offense. It's the kind of deck that once it gets rolling, it's going to be very difficult to stop because it has a lot of stuff out on the field and it can do a lot of very powerful things. It's got stuff like Heliod, so your magical enchantments will have Vigilance and won't tap or anything. And it's got Spear of Heliod. It's got both Ninely. It has a lot of actually pretty good aggression that you can use late into the game when you have your angels out and some of your enchantments have become creatures. So it looks very competitive to me for a budget deck, and I find it to be very appealing, and it's definitely something I would try to play because a lot of these resources are very available. And, I mean, it just looks like a fun deck.
I would definitely play it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my cup of tea.
No?
Yeah, your land destroys your cup of tea.
I feel that there aren't enough lands in this deck. There's only 24.
I see the issue there.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
No, but...
I didn't see it.
So, what are your ratings on this deck, Bismarck?
Oh, would you like me to give the ratings?
Are we going to ratings already? We're not going to...
Well, I guess, sure. I guess I'll just do my ratings so that the two of you can do your presentation, give your perspectives on it. Creativity, I will give this deck a 7, similar to the previous deck, because I find it very. I applaud the fact that they were able to build a deck that looks so actually competitive and self-synergistic from some cards that would be doubted in that kind of deck, because there's a couple cards in there that aren't considered very great by the majority of the community, but it seems to put them together in just the right way that you're able to keep yourself alive, keep yourself safe, and pull off a very strong victory with a lot of very powerful creatures. Synergy, I will give the second deck another 7. Well,
just a 7.
Just a 7?
Yeah,
you know what? I'm actually going to give this deck an 8 because it has a lot of enchantments and a lot of ways to make those enchantments more useful. With Starfield of Nyx, your enchantments are going to become creatures that you can use to swing for the win. With Sigil of the Empty Throne, every enchantment you play is going to get you an angel that you can use to swing for the win. With Eidolon of Blossoms, every enchantment you play is going to be an opportunity to get Sigil of the Empty Throne and Starfield of Nyx so you can swing for the win. So, if you play your cards well, the cards play themselves almost in a way that lets you accelerate pretty well into a victory, a little bit into the late game, but in a way that you are going to be very difficult to put a stop to if they don't have some very strong enchantment removal from the grid. Ease of play, I will give this deck a 6, because if you're not familiar with this kind of subtype, it might be a little iffy, because enchantment decks haven't really been a thing for a long time until Theros came around and it got support from Magic Origins. So if you don't quite understand how the enchantments work well together, you might have a hard time, but I think it could become pretty clear once you look at the cards long enough and start to understand how they work together. because they cooperate very well. And then once you understand that, I mean, you're going to have a great time with the deck because the cards themselves aren't that hard to play with.
I have
So
a question.
overall, yes?
No, say your overall, then I'll ask.
Okay. Overall, I'm going to give this deck an 8 because it looks like it's a very resourceful and intelligent deck that I find to be very appealing and totally something I would love to own and play myself. All right. Orange?
I do like... Okay. Starfield. Yeah, Starfield and Nyx. It's a good card.
Mm-hmm.
It's a buffer for the lack of creatures you have in the deck. My question, I guess, this says that all non-aura enchantments will have this base power and base toughness equal to its converted mana cost.
Yes.
If you have 5 or more, right? Does that mean that Heliod and Nyx Fleece Ram might get nerfed because of that?
Yes. Yes, it does. If that is activated, the Nyx Fleece Ram would be a 2/2, and Heliod would be... what's his converted mana cost? Actually, don't remember.
4/4.
4/4? Okay.
I mean,
then
he's
yes.
still
In that context,
indestructible,
yes.
but it would be a buff to Edelana Blossom. However.
Yes, that's true. Edelana Blossoms would get +2/+2 and become a 4/4.
However, your Fleece Rams would be kind of sad, but I mean...
Yes.
A little bit.
But at least they got you through the early game.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it's like, well, you're not really that necessary anymore. Thanks for being there to save my butt.
Yeah, that's the point of the Nyx Fleece Ram. They're there for the early game.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what are your ratings?
Oh, mine or do you want Veneers?
Yours.
Mine.
Oranges.
Synergy. I'm gonna say the synergy in this is pretty outstanding in my mind. I'm thinking of giving it a 9. I don't want to give it a 10 because I feel like the synergy I don't entirely understand at the moment because it's just at this glance I'm looking at it. Maybe when I play it more, I understand it more. But I do really like it. Those Nyx Fleece Rams, very cheap. They're to give you life, and they also have 5 defense. So I mean, you're gonna be able to play that really early and stop that early game harass that you're going to have since you don't really have creatures up to begin with. And really, a lot of these enchantments work well with each other. However, my main favorite right now is Sigil of the Empty Throne, of course. You know, it's that one win. It almost seems like a win condition in this case.
It's definitely one of the win conditions.
I mean, 4/4 White Angels are really hard to beat. I think... Oh, one of the things that I've noticed is that you have 2 early cards here, Nyx Fleece Ram, and Bow of Nylea. So, like, you can give your +1 counters to your Fleece Ram, ensuring that you're going to get those enchantments out and get to those angels, or not those angels, you get to your Starfield, and then at that point your enchantments are going to be their next issue. Like, now they're swinging at me. I didn't expect that kind of thing. And the board wipes are really helpful in your case because it doesn't really affect you at all whatsoever. If you have your enchantments giving you creatures, then you'll be fine because you destroy their board, and then you don't have to worry about anything because you don't have creatures to worry about. At that point, your Nyx Fleece Rams are going to be gone. It's not going to really matter. And your Edelana Blossoms aren't going to matter because you've drawn enough cards at that point to have 7 mana to play that spell.
By the time you're going to be casting those board wipes, you probably have a plan in place to make up for whatever you've lost anyway.
Exactly. And this deck has a lot of answers that I can see. So that's why I'm going to be giving that a 9. Creativity, I'm going to give it an 8. This is one of those decks, just a pure enchantment deck. Well, everything is an enchantment in this deck, and I have seen our friend's enchantment deck, and I wasn't too impressed by it. And I haven't seen results of this deck yet, but I can see that it's going to be good. If you survive the early game, this deck's going to spiral out of control faster than you can say Supercala something.
Yes. Perfect.
So ease of play, not as difficult as the land deck. You have more options here. definitely. You just really need to get something to block that harass.
Yeah.
So your main options here. Ideally I like to start with a ram and the bow, and spear would be nice too for that +1/+1.
Mm-hmm. And the destruction for anything that might get through.
Exactly, yeah. That's like your insurance right there.
Mm-hmm.
So ease of play, I'll probably give it a 7.
Okay.
Because it can be a little difficult to survive that early game. I have to test it to really know, but from what I can see, it might be a little difficult.
But if
overall,
you can get to like turn 4 or so, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, because the mana kind of curves off near that point, or at the tip of the curve is around 4, looks like.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're going to be pretty good. So yeah, overall, I'll give this deck a 7.
Okay.
I'd probably play it competitively. It seems like one of those decks I'd play it for fun a lot to test it out before I do that, so I'm really comfortable with it. Know when I should play stuff, when I should play stuff. It'd take me a while to get used to, but I would definitely like to play it at least once at maybe Friday Night Magic. Yeah, I like the deck.
All right, Finir.
All right. So
what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I said that I wasn't a huge fan of this, and that's because it's kind of an idea that was set in place by Theros, but Theros didn't, pull through with it. I'll be right back. Excuse me.
Okay. In the meantime, well, orange, pretty good. How are the fans?
He just left. All right.
Yeah. Well, we'll just give him a minute.
That was expected. We actually had that slated in the schedule. Don't worry.
Oh, this is something I guess I'll bring up while he's gone. Something interesting that this article about the deck has presented is they've talked about a couple of kinds of removal, enchantment-based removal that they deal with. There's Dramaka's Command, which was rare, that causes people to sacrifice enchantments, and you're able to get around that rule with the fonts, because the way the fonts work is that you pay some mana and sacrifice them to get their effect, which you can do to get around a spell forcing you to sacrifice an enchantment, which is extraordinarily helpful, because then that sort of removal is practically negated altogether, because you just get the effect anyway.
True. Sorry, I'm back. I had to let my dog out.
Right. I'll just quickly go through these because I just find it interesting. Sorry. There's a couple cards like Erase and Reclamation Sage that are just straight up artifact removal, or enchantment removal, which will get rid of one thing at a time. But since there's so many enchantments in the deck, you're probably drawn to another, because most of the cards there are multiple copies of them. And then there's Back to Nature, which they were printed, which is simply destroy all enchantments. If that happens, you're boned.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna add these deck to the chat in case any of you guys are curious to checking them out yourself.
Sure. All right, Finir, are you ready to give your spiel?
All right. So, like I was saying before, it was an idea proposed by Theros, but Theros didn't really pull through with it because, in the pro scene there wasn't many, enchantment tribal, let's brawl it out, you and me, just punch you have boxing gloves on, one's enchantment, the other one's removal, just hitting each other back and forth. No. It was a lot of, aggro and control play. So...
That's true.
So, creatively, I have to give it a 5 because I feel like this is their way, Origins was kind of their way of saying, oh, sorry, here's the rest of the enchantment tribal we meant to give you.
I see your point. How about Synergy?
Synergy, I have to give it a 9.
Yeah. Understood.
I have to give it a 9 because, so the Land Destroy was a piece of art. This is a sculpture perfectly made by, the enchantment gods of deck building. Like, it doesn't
So not
matter what you
Heliod?
draw. You're going to be able to play something and have a benefit from it. You're never going to have a turn where, oh, I'm sitting here, cards in hand, doing nothing. I draw, play land, pass. No, you're always going to be playing something. So that's why I have to give it a 9 on Synergy. Because, like, it just works perfectly together. And, Sigil of Empty Throne and then Starfield of Nyx, those two are just sweet lovers of the night sky. Ease of play, I want to give it an 8 for ease of play.
Oh, okay.
Because going back to what you said earlier, where it kind of plays itself because it's so well synergized, going back, like,
Right.
oh, early game, I don't have a Nyx Fleece Ram. Well, good thing I have, like, 1 or 2 Radiant Fountains in my hand. Oh, and, that's going to give you plenty of time to draw into them, into the Nyx Fleece Ram. And if you're against a control deck, well, that's great, because now I'm just sitting on health. And then when they do go to, bring out their huge, like, oh, I'm gonna wreck your face, just banishing light.
Yep.
Like,
And then it's gone. And you have another enchantment on the field, so if you're lucky, you might have gotten yourself an angel or two out of it.
you got yourself an angel or two out of it, and you have a 3/3. Like, just mind-blowing. So, I've been I've been talking up this deck a lot, even though personally I do not favor it. But I have to give it a 9 overall, because it is a very competitive deck. And, I'm gonna go ahead and say this with a little caution. It is the most affordable competitive deck I have researched or seen in a long time.
It looks really good too for being budget.
Yeah, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you can
it's
argue,
on a pretty good budget.
you can argue, like, $55 isn't really budget, but if you're an experienced Magic player or, a player who's been playing for a while, $55 for a very good competitive deck is kind of a steal.
Yeah, it's almost nothing.
Yeah.
It
And
says even its lowest price could be $33.24 online, depending on how you buy your cards.
yeah.
Yep.
And, like, the lands aren't super special. Like, oh, I have, 4 Scry lands, and then the rest are, like, self-heal. And then, the sideboard is very well crafted. You do have those naturalize, or, say you are playing against a more aggressive deck, you have 2 more Banishing Lights, you have 3 more End Hostilities in your sideboard. So,
Yeah.
you definitely have control of the situation with this deck while being able to punch your opponent in the face until they cry.
Yeah, that's the
All
goal, guys. Punch your opponent in the face till they cry.
Yep. All right, moving on to our oh, is there one last thing you'd like to say? You can go ahead, man. No, you
let's
done?
move on.
Yeah, we didn't want to hear
All
your
right.
opinion anyway.
Harsh. All right, our third and final deck of the night is called Abzan Rally. It is number 1 on the list of MTG top 8 decks. It is a competitive pro deck, so don't expect something simple or cheap of this one.
Yeah.
The way this deck
One
works.
is what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
there
you
isn't
can
a
buy
written-
it. You can buy it from
Yes.
TCG Player for
for
$291.
Mhm. So not nearly as
Budget.
as our previous deck. There isn't a written description of this deck, but from what I could gather in simply reading this deck is this is a brutally board controlling creature sacrifice deck. This deck has 3 Merciless Executioners and 2 Flushbag Marauders, which are functionally the same as one another. when they enter the battlefield, everyone has to sacrifice a creature, and generally you're going to be sacrificing that creature to its own ability. Now that's good on its own. Everybody loves Fleshbag Marauder. But that's when it starts to get interesting. This deck has Grim Haruspex, which is whenever a non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. So you're going to be filling up your hand. You've got cards like Death Mist Raptor, which can come back up from the graveyard when the other morph creatures you have in your deck flip, like Grim Haruspex itself. You've got Den Protector, which is another morph card. When it flips, you get to bring something back from your graveyard, which is probably going to be one of the Merciless Executioners or Fleshbag Marauders, which you can then play again to wipe more creatures off the opponent's board. This deck also has a playset of Liliana, the new one from Magic Origins that flips, and of course it's going to be incredibly easy to get her to flip because you have so much creature removal. And when she flips, you're going to be able to pull creatures out of graveyards to get them back straight away, use their abilities again, or take the creatures that you made the other person kill off. Additionally, you'll be getting rid of their cards so they can't play things. They're just going to have a bad time because you will have huge board control.
Yeah.
There's also Satyr Wayfinder, which you can use to mill away some things, which will help you get them out of your graveyard with stuff like Den Protector. Elvish Mystic for some ramp, and in the instants and sorceries, there's Collected Company, which will get you some creatures that cost 3 or less, namely Fleshbag Marauder and Merciless Executioner. So you're going to be getting these things for cheap and wiping off the opponent's board, and that's when your Death Mist Raptors come in for the kill because they're 3/3 death touches that might even be a 4/4 if you can flip them over.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like to emphasize those cards there.
Mm-hmm. So it's brutal. It's rude. There's another Fleshbag Marauder on the sideboard in case you need more Fleshbag Marauder. There's some straight up removal. There's 2 Heroes Downfalls and a Murderous Cut in the sideboard. 2 Dramaka's Commands, so if you need to get rid of enchantments too. Interesting note about the lands, there's actually only 3 basic lands, 2 plains and a forest. Urborg Team of Yawgmoth, so you can get a lot of the black because it's actually a very black-heavy deck. Sandstep Citadel as a good mana fixer. And Confluence is another great mana fixer. So, in summary, this deck is make sure your opponent has absolutely no creatures and then use your bigger creatures or even their creatures to swing in and do hilarious damage for your entertainment. Because it has ways to bring things back from the graveyard, so even if you lose things, you're going to get them back pretty soon. Should I go first again, since that's what we've been doing so far?
I don't care.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay. Creativity. This is a little tough.
This is the number 1 deck to be,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's creativity. I don't know.
I
don't know if I would. I don't know if I would call it. I don't know if I would call it that creative of a deck, frankly. I think for creativity, I'm going to give it a 6. Because as good of a deck as it appears to be, it's sort of bland almost. You're just going to kill everything and attack until the other person's gone. There's not a lot. There's not that much to it. That's all you have to do. If you understand the deck. What?
From Land Pirate would definitely love that deck.
Oh yeah,
Just killing things.
As I criticize it for its creativity, I'm giving it a 9 for synergy because this looks like a preposterously good deck. Just in the way it works. By the turns that you can swing for lethal, they won't have anything on the board. Things have gone well for you, and you've played your cards right. You're going to be able to stomp people out really quickly with this kind of deck. Ease of play, I'm going to have to give this one, I'm going to call it a 6. Because clearly there's a lot of good cards in the deck. But if you don't understand how it works and how to use those cards to best advantage that you can, you could get outpaced because you have a sort of tricky land base. There's a sort of weird curve to the deck if you don't have your Elvish Mystics. It's a lot of 3-drops, I think. Yeah, it is very mid-range. But it's not. I wouldn't call it very easy to play because you have to know what to play when, and I mean, what am I trying to say here? I'm good at words.
You know,
That's what
if
we had
you
you
do
talk first.
one misplay, you know, you can basically ruin the game for yourself.
Yes, that's true. That's true. If you don't quite understand what kind of cards you're playing with, you might sacrifice the wrong thing or bring the wrong thing out of the graveyard, do the wrong thing with Liliana, and then you're going to have a bad day. So overall, I'm going to give this deck, I will give it an 8 just because it looks like such a powerful deck for having such relatively small cards. Because, I mean, even if your Death Mist Raptors fail you, you've got some Nantuko Husk that you can sacrifice other things to for big bonus buffs and huge amounts of damage. So it's definitely a good deck, and it's definitely incredibly competitive, but I don't find it very interesting to play. It looks almost boring to me, just because it's sort of plain in the way it plays. But it's definitely a good deck. Not my type, but totally something I can understand why it's so good and favored in the pro scene, and why it did so well. All right, I guess we're going to orange.
Hold on, guys. Just have Rob.
There? Oh, okay.
All right, so
Finier?
I'm up. All right. So creativity, it's an idea of black since the beginning of time. Just kidding, since the beginning of magic.
Absurd removal.
Yeah, hey, let me kill my things, so they kill your things. All right, yay, we're all losers together. So creativity, I have to give it a 4 because I wanted to give it a 3 or a 2 because that's what black is, self-sacrifice and hopefully get something good out of it. But I gave it a 4 because sometimes I forget because I do play a lot of mono black. I play one mono black deck, but it's by far the best, and it's mono black discard. So I kind of forget about that whole other side of black where it's like, hey, let me sacrifice my things. Rather than, you get nothing. For synergy, I have to agree with Bismarck. I have to give it a 9 because it just works together so perfectly. It's well crafted. And, we've been talking about the Fleshbag Marauders and the Merciless Executioner. Well, Nato Husk is a powerhouse. It is absurd. Oh, well, my Elvish Mystics are getting in the way and I don't really need them. Let's kill 4 of them, well...
You kill 4 of them, swing for 10.
To do it.
Yeah. It just works magic. I find this kind of...
This is magic.
Yeah. Wow. I kind of want to say this is what the deck is kind of built around. With the with just sacrificing to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So definitely.
So synergy is definitely a 9. Ease of play, you have to play with this deck a lot, and you have to sit here and study it, go through the cards, kind of memorize your deck list.
Totally.
You kind of have to be able to predict what you're going to draw into. So ease of play is going to be a 5 because it is a bland deck, like Bismarck said, but you still need that concept of the idea. You have to kind of grow with it, understand it. I have this wacky hand, what do I do with it? Well, okay, this, and then that.
You whack with it.
overall, I am going to give it a 7, and I give the 7. Trying not I gave the 7 not knowing or trying to ignore the idea that it is a first place winner. Because
putting aside just reputation.
Yeah, it's all 10 because it's a first place winner.
Well, yeah. I give it a 7 overall because it is kind of this crazy idea. Well, not crazy, but an original idea brought back to life. If you get that pun, I will give you a high five later.
No, I understand. It's doing what Black does best.
Yeah, and kind of capitalizing on it, and bringing it out for Origins
with the help of a couple other colors.
Yeah, so now White has a little bit of a dark side,
Yeah.
And Green
it uses White Revival to its advantage.
Yeah. So it kind of gives White that twisted view.
Yeah, White's not always the good guy.
Yeah.
All right. So, Moldiest Orange, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts. Okay. Creativity-wise, half this... Hold on, sorry.
Okay. Just a moment.
So what do you think would be a good counter to this deck?
A good counter this deck?
Yeah.
Stuff like Bajuka Bog and what's it called? Tormod's Crypt. Graveyard Hate, of course. Definitely, because something I'm sensing that the deck likes to do is bring things like Rally the Ancestors and Deathmist Raptor back from the graveyard to do more stupid aggression and sacrificing for your advantage. All right, Moldiest Orange.
Sacrificing isn't stupid. Oh, okay. Creativity-wise, I don't really actually understand the deck myself that much. But from what you guys are saying, it sounds pretty creative. Oh, okay. I do like the use of sacrificing your own creatures. I was going through the deck and I was like, why would I do that? And then I do see that there are ways that it makes it useful. I didn't know when you're telling me that with Fleshbag Marauder you can sacrifice itself to its own ability. That works, right? That's what you said?
Yes.
I didn't know it worked that way, and I was like, why would I play this to sacrifice a creature that seems to be really important right now? Because, I want to keep these alive. No, I don't want to kill them, kind of thing. Especially with, like, Death Mist Raptor. I mean, the Elvish Mystics can go, right? I mean, after a while, they're not really that useful.
Eventually, yeah.
I think Liliana's ult kind of really makes this deck reach its full potential in my mind. Your fleshbacks come back, and then you're going to be drawing too many cards with Grimm's Horus P.
Grim.
I think it's a really creative deck. Personally, I don't know if I'd be able to pull it off, though. It seems very complicated. I guess that's, it's creative. It's a complicated, well thought out deck. That's where I'm putting my points in for creativity, I guess.
Okay.
I couldn't come up with it myself. I'm gonna give it an 8 creativity. I realized that whole time I didn't give a score for it. I was just saying it's creative.
That's okay.
It seems pretty synergistic, from the way you're describing it. I've been looking through it and seeing some synergy through it, but I guess I myself can't see everything, and after play with it, I will be able to see some more synergy that I didn't realize at first. I kind of wish there was more morph creatures, almost, for that Deathness Raptor.
Really?
There's only
32 creatures?
Only 32 creatures. I'm saying for its turn face-up ability.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's one of the main damage dealers in the deck, and I kind of want to have it when I want it, if it dies kind of situation.
I see your point.
I mean, you do have Let me see. Let me count it. You have 3, uh, 6 more creatures. You have 2 creatures, but 6 of them, which is nice. So you have 6 potential times to bring it back, which is good. But yeah, it does feel pretty synergistic. I mean, I usually think sacrificing your own creature is counterproductive, but in this case, it does work. So I'm gonna give it an 8 as well for synergy. Ease of play from someone who's new to Magic. This would be a really complicated deck. And I don't know if I really want to base it off of that for ease of play. But if I were to base
I think that's a fair perspective.
Okay, well, if it was from that perspective, I'd give it a 2, because if I hand this deck to someone who's been playing, I mean, he's not entirely new, right? He's been playing games for a while, but he's relatively new to it still. He would not know what he's doing that well, or make really bad decisions, because this deck requires certain decision making for it to work. That's how I feel. I feel like if I were given this deck, it would take me a long time to completely get it down pat to where I know what I'm doing with it.
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
So for ease of play, I'm probably gonna give it a 4, but for it being pretty complicated. At least out of all of the 3 decks we've had, this deck is the most complicated, and the word I'm thinking of. There's a lot of functionality to it. Yeah. Overall, though, I'm gonna give it a, not because it's the number 1 deck. It's a 10. No, kidding. Not. I'll give it a 7.
Okay, that's fair.
All right. Sorry that I had to leave in the middle of that.
Oh no, that's fine.
I don't have a door to my room, so.
Well, we've gotten through all the decks. Let's quickly go over our favorites, and then we can wrap this up. I will say that my favorite deck is the Starfield Enchantress deck. It's a beautiful looking deck, very good synergy, and I love a lot of the art in it. It's totally something I would play. Orange, what was your favorite deck?
I gotta say, I like the enchantment deck the most. I have to agree with you. It seems like the most fun I'd have out of all these decks. It wouldn't be frustrating like the last deck we just looked at. I wouldn't be aggravated with being mana screwed 90% of the time like in the first deck. Also, I can just pump out creatures and just to make my opponent wish he never played against me. I feel like a god playing this deck. The enchantment god, that's who I'd be. Yeah, I love this deck.
Mm-hmm. All right, Fanir, I think we all know what your answer is going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be the Self-Land Destroy deck is by far my favorite. Yeah. It is that far out, wacky. It is the AP Malphite mid of Magic. That's all I have to say. Great. It is the AP.
You're making so many tears go down my face as you say that.
Like, it is that one deck where it's like, you start playing it and your opponent's just like, how long have you been playing Magic? Like, I have some extra cards if you need help. Turn around, 20 damage to the face, just drop your entire handful of lands, be like, discard them all, like 7 million to the face, GG. But I'm just crazy and psychotic, so this just suits me.
Something like that.
This just suits me as a person.
All right, so I guess today's winner is Starfield Enchantress for its charm and pep. All right. Looks like we're just about done here. I'm going to wrap this up real quick. I think we're going to take a break for a couple minutes. Yes, gentlemen?
Yeah.
After that, what's it going to be? League of Legends?
I might not be there for it, but...
all right. Well, I think Fanir and I will do a little League of Legends gameplay before we head out for the evening. It's been wonderful having you all. I'm very glad to be the host of PlanesTalking. I'm super happy to be on the show. On the next episode, we're going to be doing a discussion about the upcoming new set, Battle for Zendikar, that everyone is super pumped for. Because by the time I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks, but by the time I'm back, spoiler season will probably have started for that set, so we'll have some things to talk about. We'll see who's there. Absolutely. And it's going to be a great time. I've had a wonderful time here this evening, and I look forward to being back on Planes talking with you. Tune in again for a couple minutes for some League of Legends gameplay with me and Fanir, and good night.
and we're out.